Vamos a continuar para cerrar esta
All right, so now
mañana,
to
¿no?
close the morning session.
Arrancábamos sobre cómo las palabras
We're
mienten,
talking about
intentar
how
ver
the words lie
cómo se
and
decapa
kill.
ese
We're
lenguaje,
trying to
porque
strip
el
language
objetivo al
to
fin
see
y al cabo
how
es
we can do
intentar,
this, because at the end of
como
the
nos
day,
lo ha
it's all
dicho
about,
al final
you know,
Summer, ¿no?
as
Buscar esa
Summer
justicia, o
was
como le
saying,
decía
it's all about trying
Camus,
to
intentar
find
disminuir
this justice.
el odio, la
And
mentira.
Camus used to say it's about trying to
Eso es algo que hemos pedido a las que son
diminish, to try
nuestras
to
dos invitadas de este fin de
mitigate
mañana,
hate and lies.
Ngolefol
And
y Carla
we
Fibla.
have
Muchas
asked
gracias a
Mrs.
las dos
Ngolefol and
por
Carla
estar con
Fibla. We
nosotros,
thank them
y
both for
con
being
ellas os
here.
dejo, y quería también,
And
agradecer
we're
a
going to
Male,
try to see how to
becaria de
reduce
este
lies
proyecto,
and
que
hate.
nos ha hecho de
I would also
traductora
like
también
to
de
thank
Summer,
Male
que
for
me merece
her
aplaudir, por supuesto,
wonderful
nuestros
job
traductores, pero a Male
as an
también.
interpreter with the Arabic language. So thank you very much, Male. That's a round of applause for you.
Hola a todas y a todos.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much for this invitation. The truth is that it's absolutely great being here in such a wonderful isle. Ngonefol and I have decided to change a little bit after the intensity of these morning sessions. We didn't know, to say the truth. But she wanted to contact me mid-April. We did a brief Zoom to organize this roundtable. And in less than 10 minutes, we ended up saying that this conversation on hatred and lies had to, hate and lie, had to be improvised. Even though we've been pretty busy, we've managed to continue talking via WhatsApp. And yesterday, when we arrived here in Menorca, I'll tell you where we stopped. And basically, I will be fully transparent. I will share with you our WhatsApp conversation so that you will understand where this dialogue began. I started talking about hate and lie, whether there was a union, because I'm a journalist, and I started talking about fake news, as we've mentioned today, which naturally seem to be the fact-checking that Mikel mentioned too, because we never know whether things that we read are truth or not, and we are being accustomed with the fact that lie is part of what we read. And regarding hate, I mentioned Gone, whether it's something that can be cultivated or which generates results with the goal of actually destroying the one expressing that hate. And Gone answered then to what I said: the danger is suspicion, loss of trust. People are mistrusting what they see, read, or hear. Everything is a potential lie, and conspirations or conspiranoia becomes bigger and bigger. And she also posed some questions. Do you believe that life in community has an impact at with the level of hate? Maybe hate is linked to the need of domination. And she continued, yes, in the long term, if hate destroys the person who cultivates it, it could become an obsession, because hate leads to lie. We use lie to justify hate. Is it necessary to have or mature societies with perspective and discernment?
La confianza en uno mismo también es un arma, ¿no? Hay que cultivar permanentemente el conocimiento y la comprensión del otro, la alteridad.
Other, you know, the concept of the other is key in my work. And she asked me, how could we do so humanity could be at the heart of our lives? And she said, I use art. All my artworks are production platforms where thoughts, knowledge, and nice information is shared, because this is a medium so that hate will not be shadowing the human adventure. I agree with mistrust, but we're living in a very informed world. We can fact-check easily regarding lies. We are responsible if we spread them. Yes, hate is created between the contact amongst people. In a society, you can build or destroy things that... And I asked her, why do you think there is a link between domination and hate? Do you believe that hate is a product of ignorance, that if we cultivate it, we are stepping backwards? I fully agree. She said the education and knowing the other is the key to combat hate. But if we are conscious, aware, why do we cultivate it? Who has the power to transform society in the community to fight against hate? Is it possible a society without hate? I doubt it. It's in our DNA. We are human beings, but human values seem not to be important enough. The need towards empathy is not fully recognized. I believe we are living under a crisis of comprehension towards the other. Regarding to what she said about art being a powerful medium, I said in my profession during the 30 years that I've been a journalist, I've always said that a great effort, I've made an effort so that people were always at the center, respecting the way I expressed my narratives. It's a way to finish lies. What sort of challenges have you faced? I asked her when sharing knowledge and experiences. Can lies be used positively? And there, Ngone answered that people don't make the effort of verifying or fact-checking. Influencers have a louder voice than journalists, and it's become something very easy to manipulate the masses. There's a relationship between hate and domination. It's destruction of a country, community, or work. We decide the destiny of that country or peace or community. That is domination. And she continued, hate is not only the product of ignorance. Jealousy or envy is also cultivated by hate, even if you're not aware of it. And then she said she doesn't think that it's possible to create a society without hate. That's utopia, and the 7 capital sins and religions, she said, they have not managed, sometimes they are being used, religions, they have not managed, because they are being used to justify lie and hate, and we are living this existential crisis worldwide. As for art, it's a platform that I use, she said, as an experiment lab to use a different perspective or regard of living together without denying the past or using lies. The danger is la pensée unique, the single thought. We need to understand the other, comprehend the other with a certain perspective. To work with artists is creating a mosaic of proposals or different contradictory perspectives, but the goal is to talk to each other. So we fully agreed on this. She also said that lies cannot be used positively, and she asked me again, what do you think about that? And then I said that social networks and this influencing boom is one of the major issues, but also the question should be, why do they have more power than journalists? Where are we failing? And the relationship between hate and domination, in this relationship, the problem becomes bigger if domination grows because it reaches dictatorships. Do you think that if we destroy, we dominate? As for religion, I believe this is the only aspect where we didn't agree, where the conversation finished. I said that I believe religions create confrontation. There are greater differences. They generate hate. And I asked her, why don't you think that art is not more powerful in our societies when there's a series of values and principles that could help us fight fight against lies. Regarding the single thought, I fully agree on this, even though it seems that it's pretty easy. I don't understand why we don't manage to do so, and I don't think that lies can be used positively. There are opinion leaders who defend this position, but I don't see the usefulness of lie. Gomez says regarding social networks that what social networks create is that it's not necessary to reflect because you're reading something in 2 lines. So she doesn't know why influencers are more powerful than journalists. She doesn't think it's the informant or the media's fault. And as for religions, this is where our dialogue finished. She said, I don't fully agree. Where we both said, okay, here begins the debate. Autocratic regimes use religion to justify liberty privation or freedom privation. And regarding artists having the power of allowing us to think differently, and I said, why don't we manage to do so? She says, everyone wants to have their own truth, to answer to their own selves. And this is where we finished. I had reached Menorca. She was reaching the island. So this is where we are going to improvise and continue this previous dialogue. And thinking about Camus, by chance, I read this interview in Les Progrès de Lyon in 1958 inside part of a long article titled The Servers of Hate in 1951, sorry. And I'll only highlight 3 aspects, 3 short fragments by Camus. Albert said, freedom is not about saying anything and multiplying scandalous or establishing dictatorships in name of future freedoms. Freedom is, number 1, not lying. This is a reflection he's given us. Second one, hate is in itself a lie because it denies what any man or woman is, deserving compassion. Lie is more subtle because it could happen that we lie without hate. Anyone who hates anyone who hates is not respecting or truly loving himself. Everyone loves humanity in the same way as you would love a raw steak to be served on your plate. Everyone possesses a truth, but it's somehow decadent. The truth is flying on top of your assassinated children. Nothing is given or promised. Everything is possible for whoever accepts risk and action. So finally, Ngone has the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah. I was not sure because I can't see you. My name is Fall, because otherwise folle means that I'm crazy in French, and I'm not crazy. Well, yes, we have discussed a lot, and it was quite a challenge because she travels a lot. Carla travels a lot, and I was in Madagascar. And at the beginning, I was a little bit shocked when I saw the title of the discussion, and I thought, does Sandra hate me or what? What's going on? I'm not a philosopher. And Sandra, I've never met her before, and maybe she just hates me. But anyway, we thought with Carla that it would be interesting to exchange about our different professional and personal points of view. We obviously come from different backgrounds, but she has lived in Africa, I have lived in Europe. She's a journalist, I work in contemporary art, and I was just interested in knowing how she, as a journalist, how she is supposed to narrate facts and what's her basis of her work, and how my kind of work with contemporary art, how this can be a platform for dissemination of knowledge, and how I can also use and even grasp history and education to make my art. I think that people may be manipulated, especially those who cannot access knowledge or those who refuse to access knowledge. There can also be laziness, and there are also regimes that manipulate masses and that reject humanity. In the first conversation, actually, we were talking, a mention was made to the war in Algeria. And up until 3 years ago, people in France would talk about the so-called events in Algeria and not about a war in Algeria. And there are many artists, both French and Algerian, who used to resort to different metaphors to speak about the war that was suffered in Algeria. Also, when I see other artists, I'm interested in getting to know how they kind of restore the truth by exhumating histories and different stories. And actually, if I may say so with no pretension whatsoever, I think that what we do as contemporary artists and what journalists do is somehow related, because somehow we are digging, we are observers, we are witnesses, and we are digging in order to explain certain things. Whereas creators are in a different kind of logic or path. For us, we try to make our audiences think through our work of art, which can be poetic or spiritual. But I would like actually to go back to our discussion, because we had quite a rich discussion between two different airports. And you know, at some point, Carla was saying, "Oh, we agree on everything. It's going to sound boring." But at some point, we somehow disagreed. And I would like to go back to what was said about religion, to what I said about religion. Yeah, when she mentioned religion, of course, there's something very personal of what everybody has, of the relationship anyone has with relationship. It also depends very much on the education and childhood that you have had. I was lucky enough to be a migrant person who was benefit from lots of things. Actually, I had lots of benefits. I was the kind of economic migrant. So I have spent part of my life in places where I could get to know another culture and different religions. But I came from a childhood where there was no rejection of religion, but it's just that religion didn't exist in my family. So it was quite a struggle for me to try to understand these societies where religion is so important. And I'm thinking especially about Islam, and how this can mark a way of life. I was actually living as well in a very natural manner, in spite of the fact that I was not a believer in Islam. But anyway, I think that my sensation may be related to a contemporary vision of religions. What I see today is that these interpretations of religion and how not so much the interpretation of the holy books of religion, but actually, well, the interpretation of religion as a concept, the use of religion. This is actually what really generates tension, according to me. This is actually what generates the confrontation that we're living today. It's difficult for me. I'm looking at you, I'm listening to the translation. But yes, I can sense that you have a contemporary experience of religion. And this means that other people who are Also, contemporary people would have an archaic vision of religion. No, not especially. It's like, you know, for me, words do have a lot of importance. I understand Spanish a little bit, but not enough to speak. Now I'm going to speak as a Senegalese person. Maybe this is a Eurocentric vision of religion. That's because, well, what I sense is that religion is used in certain parts of the world to justify crime. And it's used as a way of killing any disagreements or any disagreeing voice. I come from a territory where we were never angry towards religion, and we do have different religions. So the idea of the single thinking, which has a contemporary vision of religion, you know, we are all contemporary to our times. So my question is, you're talking about a contemporary vision of religion, but maybe you're confusing it with the Western vision of religion. Well, I don't think I agree. That's not the way I see it, but I'm going to explain why. When I'm talking about a contemporary vision of religion, it's not how it is perceived in a territory or another. I'm just talking about what I see and the perception that there is in the current world. So do you think my vision of religion is Eurocentric just because I'm a European person? Or, you know, what I was trying to say before is that I had an experience of different religions in countries that are outside of Europe, and I have got to understand why religion is part of people's life. But in my experience, I've seen that religion leads to confrontation and to violence. That's what I wanted to say. So what about what, you know, you're saying that religion leads to confrontation. Well, maybe we can confront, you and I. And you were saying that, yes, it has created wars. In the past, it has. I hope that it will not be the case anymore in the future. But, yeah, you were saying it leads to confrontation. As a journalist who needs to narrate facts, and as a journalist who's a professional who tries to seek truth, how do you do not to get trapped? Well, that's exactly what I try to do. I try to stick to facts, I try to narrate facts, and if there's a series of extremism in a kind of society, in a kind of place, well, I try to talk about it. And religion is sometimes used for that purpose. And this is what I want to let people know. Of course, if you want to interfere, if anybody wants to participate, please feel free. Yes, of course, this is just open. This is just a casual conversation. But actually, very often, you know, words can hurt, and words do have a very important weight. And sometimes we've seen different writings or texts or journalists being vehicles to generate lies. So how do you handle this? You know, in your profession, knowing that certain people do that, certain people are tipping from a point to or from a side to another. Well, I think that this is very much related to everybody's ethics. I mean, the way you can exercise your profession and is actually your way of life. I think it's all very much related, but I think it's also a very particular exercise and personal exercise, and of course it depends on the profession as well. I've seen situations and cases where certain media would invite to this confrontation. You know, in Spain, for example, the analysis that is drawn from all issues regarding migration makes you realize that certain media do encourage the fear of the other. And yes, this is something that was mentioned
Yo no estoy de
before.
acuerdo con eso, intento
And
combatirlo,
I do not agree with this kind of approach, and I try to fight against it by
que se puedan ir escuchar también incluso esas voces
trying
más
to
radicales
listen
porque están de repente
to
teniendo
all
ese
the
espacio.
voices and try to understand why certain radical voices are gaining space. And for me, it's very difficult, and I think that Camus used to talk about this. It's very difficult to remain objective. It's very difficult not to let yourself get involved in certain things. But I think that journalism has to keep a certain distance, even though sometimes it is not possible. And then, at this new stage in life that you're living, I mean, in what you're going to do in coming months, where there are lots of lies and lots of hate to deconstruct, have you thought about any tools or any path that you will undertake in order to try to fight against this situation? Well, now I'm going to have a much more direct relationship with the civil society of Iraq and Syria, where the situation is so complicated. And I just wanted to get a certain distance from journalism, and I thought that it was the right time to do that and the right time to establish a closer contact with civil society in these countries and to see how the conflict in these countries has evolved. It's more than a decade of a conflict, especially in Iraq, and I'll try to see how my experience may be useful to try to channel or try to provide certain tools in order to build something, you know, whenever the occasion comes. I'm not saying that it will come right now, but I hope that it will eventually come. And now I'm going to ask you a question. It's the time to ask you a question. I would like to know, you're talking about art and this platform. You're using the word laboratory, and I'm very much interested in this concept. And also here, I think that we have the opportunity to see how different artists are affected by our current times. How much do you think an artist needs to be protected about current times, or how much should an artist try to flow with it? Well, it's very difficult to answer the question, of course, because sometimes we're using the word artist, but there's so many people and they're all different. There are so many people in this very room who are artists, and all of them are different. I think that it's impossible to protect from the ugliness of the world. I mean, we should be absolutely disconnected from everything. We should be living in a cave or something in a mountain. And it's not so much about protecting ourselves. I think that we'd rather have a responsibility towards what's happening in front of our eyes or at the neighbor's door. And I think that everybody should try to take a position or not. And this is a choice, it's an individual choice. But I think that an artist should not protect him or herself. It's exactly the opposite. I've always been attracted towards artists who are engaged in social justice. Well, of course, it may be my personal approach, but this is what I'm trying to seek. I'm seeking artists who will convey facts and stories and information, but using metaphors. I mean, it can be through text or it can be through other expressions of art. I have myself chosen to write fiction text in order to complain about the situation, in order to point out certain wrongdoings, ill-doings. this allowed me to also to handle my frustration. So it was this way of thinking and writing in order to denounce certain situations. And other artists use metaphors, and this is what I find interesting. And that's why I like working with artists, because I think that we can somehow alert and give a warning to our contemporary societies by using our way of art, by using poetry, by using text and fiction, but also bearing in mind that, you know, when you leave the show or you finish a book or you end the exhibition, it's the moment to start questioning about what you've seen, and it's the moment where you need to wonder about society. But this is what committed artists can do. And right now, with the situation that you're experiencing in Senegal, are artists trying to take a different path, or are they succeeding to express what is happening in society? Are they giving an alternative vision to the vision that's given by the media? Well, it may be quite paradoxical, but if I take a visual artist in Senegal, it's not visual artists who were through their artistic production, it's not them who were complaining or demonstrating against a certain situation. I think that is going to take time to them. Actually, the ones that were there at the front line in order to defend democracy were rather singers. It's also it's this form of slang and the words and music and rap that are very good formats to do so. And in the last 3 years, we've seen an increase of violence, actually. And, you know, the fact that you post in Facebook, for example, let's talk about the president who left prison, who was released from prison 10 days before the election. He was arrested because he posted in his Facebook page justice parody, and actually he was arrested for that reason, and under the charge of terrorism, just because he was using the word justice parody regarding a sentence, judiciary sentence. So lots of artists left the country and they were exiled and they were political refugees in Mali. So this shows actually that the situation is such, and actually, you know, in the past, Mali and Senegal, we were part of the same empire, and right now we are somehow transcending these artificial borders between Mali and Senegal. But we're starting to understand that well, a life can be in danger because the use of a word and the post in Facebook, and also, well, young people, you know, they're in Senegal. Well, we're all realizing that demonstrating, which is a right from the 17th century in Senegal, can lead you to death right now, and we could be killed for waving the Senegalese flag because it's considered as an insurrection sign. Okay, well, I'm going to leave some time to all the contemporary artists in the audience, and I'm going to leave some time because I would like to get to know about their feedback and their point of view. And you know, there are some Vietnamese artists with whom I worked in the past, and they are quite ready to produce works of art which are related to a situation which is far away from them. But I think that certain contemporary artists need some kind, a certain kick in order to move. Or maybe they need to hear other people, witnesses, for instance, the speakers from the first panel who told us that they had undergone hell and a nightmare for some months. All right, now coming back to the topic of hate, I would like to know your opinion about this anti-French reaction that has been witnessed in certain countries in the Sahel. We've seen some coups, and we've seen that this has been used in Niger or Mali or Burkina, or even in Chad as well. And it's this kind of anti-French movement. I don't know if you consider that there's a real hate then. I don't think that there is hate. I think that it's rather that we've had our share, we've had enough. There's this poem in 1961 about the war in Algeria, and the poem is called The Pledge, and it's a pledge about the atrocities, and they're talking about the atrocities of houses burned with napalm in different towns, and about the outrage produced by the rape of his sister and the crying of the mother and the atrocities of the war in Algeria. And he says that there is no hate towards the French people. And this is one of the most powerful poems that I got to learn in school. I was very young at that time, but just to go back to that issue of hate, I think it's not so much hate. I think what we have is the feeling that we've had our share, we have had enough. So we need opportunities. And actually, from the side of France, there's this feeling of dropping and abandoning. Why don't you love me anymore? It's just, you remember the night of the 9/11? I remember some American people saying, why so much violence? What did we do to them? Well, this puts a smile in my face. And actually, they were really wondering why. You know, these American people were really wondering why. And actually, it's the same for French people. They kind of say, I don't understand where the problem is. What did we do to you? And the president of the French Republic used to say in a French magazine, he said he referred to the president of the Republic, and he said, between Africa and I would like this to be a love story. And of course, how do you expect the community to react? In Algeria, these headlines led to lots of turmoil and a wave of violence. So I think that there's this kind of point of misunderstanding that creates a rupture. And actually what made me think a lot is that I was in Madagascar 2 or 3 weeks ago, so really far away at the end of the south of Africa. And I was there in the street and I saw a graffiti saying, French go back or go home, French go home. And I couldn't find anybody able to tell me where that graffiti was coming from, or if this was a shared opinion. And everybody said, no, we don't know. So I don't know what the extent of this idea is. So it's also some kind of, you know, it's just as if African people were only able to show their emotions. So it seems that it's all about trying to be loved and not trying to be hated. And I think that things are much more complex than this. But anyway, I think that it's all the result of a relationship of centuries between these two continents. But anyway, how to deconstruct and how to get out of denial, because I think that there's a lot of denial from one side, and from the other side there's this situation of having had our share there, and this leads to rejection. And this is also instrumentalized by other people with other purposes. So what would be a love story between two can be something else. But today we were talking this morning about topics like dignity or respect. I don't know, my sensation is that whenever I worked in Africa or in Arab countries, I always have the feeling that there's never this equal treatment. There's always this kind of pretension that dominates these relationships. Of course, I do not want to generalize here, and every country is unique, but I've always felt that this kind of confrontation was rather provoked by us, by the Western side, I mean. All right, so again, let me go back to the importance of education. Because, of course, if you're growing up in a context of colonial propaganda, you can justify very easily the exploitation of a territory by other people. And this feeds this memory and this feeling of pretension, and is conveyed even unconsciously. And there's also civilization and enlightenment and education and hospitals, of course, and the same goes, let's take, for example, syphilis. They gave it to us and then they left. And for us in Senegal, we start by learning about the history of Senegal, the history of Western Africa, history of Africa, and then the history of the world, finally. And when I was studying in France in the 80s, I could see that my contemporary fellows in the School of Architecture had no knowledge whatsoever of what was going on outside Western Europe. And this was quite terrifying to me. And this is, well, before the very existence of the internet. And I thought, well, how is this possible? What did you learn at school? I mean, you do not know about the world. However, you have the feeling that you have conquered the world. But you've conquered something and you don't understand a single thing about the world. And it was impossible to have any kind of conversation because the degree of knowledge we had was not the same. So for certain people to realize that it was the African woman who had more knowledge than themselves well, this was a little bit surprising. And so this is what leads me to the importance of education. And again, young French generations, they do not know about the war in Algeria. And people do not know. I started a project in France, and I mobilized 350 schools, and I developed a training plan so that teachers could be trained to teach about the history of Africa. Because I thought, what do French people learn about the history of Africa so that people have such displaced behaviors? So I thought that it would be an idea to try to teach people about African things, and actually, if you tell them about African literature, then the only thing they know is about the African soldiers. And if I send this idea to my fellow African people, they're going to be so angry. We cannot talk about African people under those terms. So that's why I initiated this project, training project, trying to teach teachers about the African history. And I was told this will not be interesting. And in spite of this, we got 600 voluntary people. And after the first training, people were enthusiastic to get to know more, and they're just asking for more training. So this shows how there's a lack of a mismatch between the governors and well, those who rule a country and the people of a country. Sometimes we do not want to understand the society because we are ignorant, and this is what's going on in certain places. And again, if we want to reduce hate, I think that it all depends on education and also art through contemporary artists. Bearing in mind that contemporary artists, of course, they base their work very often on different, diverse things and events in life. You know, when we work amongst artists, we create different pedagogical tools for our different audiences. But I think it all comes back to education. And I think that any project is a kind of lab to test new things. And maybe something that will work in Dakar will not work somewhere else. However, we need to keep trying, and if we stop discussing, if we stop talking to each other, then we're screwed, sorry to say. And actually, I think that there are societies where we're trying to make children believe in certain things, and which are not true. And sometimes, yes, we grab religion as an excuse. Thank you.
I don't know whether we have some more extra time. You're right, feel free to go ahead. You can participate. You will be given a handheld microphone so that everyone can hear you.
Hola. Bueno, yo voy a ser pesimista.
Hi, I will be pessimistic. We've talked about dignity and other values, but I've never heard the word ethics. Nobody has mentioned ethics. And in social networks, ethics doesn't exist. And if it doesn't appear online, there's no ethics. And without ethics, there's no limit to hate and lie. It's true we haven't talked about ethics, but for me it was pretty evident sometimes. By default, I don't mention it, but I imagine that all of you have heard talking about the restitution of art pieces in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and I remember at the Met, the Metropolitan Museum, the bigger one in the US, during a round table, they were trying to explain that in their Egyptian art collection, being composed of pieces being acquired by the US under an agreement with Great Britain, being at the time having occupied, being in Egypt. And the US came with plenty of resources to do some excavations. And on exchange, part of the trophy belongs to them. So this is what they call to share this shared treasure. They said, hey, it was legal, we had a contract, we invested in this action, and I replied, okay, but is it moral, is it ethic? It's not about finding out whether it's legal or not. You do have a contract, but you were occupying some land, some country that was not yours, and the question is whether it's moral or not, because the lie is not moral either. I believe that the ethical responsibility incomes the journalist. This is why if I think of single-mindedness, what is the truth? You could ask 15 different witnesses and get 15 different versions. Maybe the question on ethics will be dealt with this afternoon, but yeah, it's of course fundamental. Thank you very much. I was not thinking about actually participating, but I'm going to. The debate on religion at least helps us add an extra layer to this necessary and super interesting debate. This Eurocentrism and the world where we live in. There is a philosophical reference. We are all philosophers. And of course, a Western philosopher, Nietzsche, for example, in a very crystal clear way said, God is dead. 100 years ago. And Westerners, we arrived and we are convinced, most of us at least, that there is only one civilization that has advanced, that is modern, and of course that we possess the single truth. And when a Western philosopher says that God is dead, we put religion, the ethics feeling, and we're not talking about religion, it's rather as spirituality as an enemy, and then we take actions, good-willed, like Carla, who's lived in Africa, in this Muslim world, where you have been welcome, where you've seen that religion did not was not an issue or was not causing collision between different communities, but the conclusion is that religions do lead towards conflict and tensions, and that's not true. What causes confrontation and using religion as a mean or as a weapon are some politicians, some people dominating, or politicians using religion to justify the way they apply or exert power, but not religions themselves. So in this world of artificial intelligence that we shall be battling against, this atheism, Christianism, religion, ethics, or spirituality is what's going to make us differentiate from that perfect, allegedly perfect world of robots and machines. Pope Francis says that in the Western world we have oftentimes used the term Islamic fundamentalism, a horror, of course, Al-Qaeda, Daesh, Boko Haram, all these religion, Islam is supplanting, is occupying or devouring our Europe. Shall they change or substitute them? No. General elections, all these, messages. They're saying that religion is leading towards this horror, hypothetical situation. And Pope Francis says, hey, it's about not Islamic fundamentalism, but not like fundamentalism either. So it's about not being radical, whatever you think, or so spirituality, religion, at least in my experience, is more present, more necessary in this 21st century if we want to live and continue here in this planet together. Little nuance, this comparison I established between religion helping convivial atmosphere. What I meant is that the way with not living in a society where religion is so present as Islam in some Islamic countries, feeling okay there afterwards, in my work, the interpretation, how we end up talking about extremisms or radicalisms. It's true that religion is a complex matter. I agree with you partially, but I also believe that the way religion is being used is leading us towards confrontation. It is being used. That need also, that spirituality allows for that convivial habitat to exist. But at the same time, it is being used in the wrong manner. We are seeing it in... Let's not talk about conflict because it's going to take forever. But my feeling is that today, we are not allowing religion the way you exposed it, you talked about it, and also here my colleague, religion as a generator of peace. Unfortunately, it is leading us more towards confrontation, probably, as Val said, due to the fact that maybe we don't fully understand how those societies fully live their religious lives. Is there anyone?
C'est à toi de fermer un peu.
C'est à oui, parce que tu as ouvert, donc je ferme.
Oui.
Donc, moi, je suis en tout cas ravie d'être.
Okay, I started, so I shall finish this roundtable. Sandra told me that I can remember this anecdote in Dakar, but yeah. It was very interesting to have these exchanges, these debates from our perspectives. I shall continue with my work. I don't regret having stopped being an architect. I fully thank every single artist here, be an architect, a movie director, poet, writer, to help me rethink the world where I live and how I could put in place some tools or projects so that their voice can be heard, to be able to be an amplifier of their messages, of the silent messages. This is our task. Being an artist. Thank you, activists throughout the world who are ready to die for all of us so that we can sit here comfortably talking about this, because we're not living, we're not suffering, it's them who are. So thanks. Thank you.